What we're going to go over today is we're going to talk about the three big launch trends that I am seeing out in the market right now. And Emily and I have talked about it. And I feel like we're both like on the same page as to like what we're seeing and from different perspectives as well. The other thing that we're going to talk about is like I wanted Emily to come on, especially because she has been has gone through the pre-launch plan program, but she also really understands launches, and not only she understands launches, like she understands them from both like an operation, I guess you could say operations, while also strategy, copy, all the things that go into it. And then I'm gonna share with you a little bit about the pre-launch plan program. I'm also here to answer your questions as we go on because I really want this to be conversational. And once I get through the awkward part of trying to share the screens, and just a little bit about Emily here. When Emily and I first started to work together, her previous launch had been 18,000. And after she pre-launch, she had a $73,000 launch on that next launch after she did. And we talked about how too she really called in ideal students. And her next launch after that was a $135,000 launch. And she had her first six-figure launch. Emily, talk a little bit about that. Like, because you sent me, I actually had a slide, but I got rid of it. I didn't want to have too many, but like knowing that you had closed with like your first six-figure launch.
I definitely cried. I think I remember messaging you in the car on Voxer and being like being a little like emotional about it. And it was such a crazy number because I see everyone else doing it. And for me, it was such I don't know, it was such like a proving point to be able to say like the six-figure launch, just having done it for clients and then to turn around and be able to do it for myself. It just felt extra special.
Yeah, so I would think too. And thank you, Sky, for being here. So I would imagine, right, like for all of us, like take a moment and be like, okay, what would this, and maybe it's not even six figures, right? Because I know for me, the first time that I launched the pre-launch plan program, I was like, oh my gosh, I just made I it was like $13,000 and I thought, "Oh my gosh, I made $13,000." And this is like I was a copywriter and doing all these things and I'd done it for my clients. So the fact that like my first launch was 13,000 and and as different launches have gone on, I think launches get like a bad rap, but I always go back to like there's no other way to make that much money at one time than with having a really directed launch, which is why I love launches. And so I want to talk about the trends that we're seeing. And the first trend that I'm seeing is that you want to think like Sarah Blakely. And I saw this quote the other day from Sarah Blakely that said, like, she doesn't worry about that she doesn't think about her competition, that she spends too much time thinking about her audience. And I think this is like something that I have been seeing, but even more so this year on how incredibly important it is to think about your customer every step of the way. And when you think about your customer, you talk to your ideal customer, you start to use the messaging and really pinpointing it down, it changes the way that you launch. And so, Emily, let's talk about this a little bit because I would love to know like how you're seeing this behind the scenes as well about how incredibly important it is to think about your audience, but not just think about them, use the words and phrases that your audience thinks. Or I'm sorry, that your audience says like in your copy.
Will you re-say her quote again? I just want to hear it one more time because it's
Yeah.
so good.
Yeah, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but she basically said like I don't worry about my competition because I spend so much time thinking about my ideal client, or I'm sorry, about my audience.
Yeah, I mean, that's totally where I was with my first big launch is like repositioning my course, really understanding what my audience needed, where they were on their journey, what they had tried before, what had failed, like all their struggles and pain points kind of came together. And um it's hard because there is a lot of competition out there. Like the market has evolved in my space. I didn't think I told anyone what I did, but I teach virtual assistants how to do marketing and have that marketing service. And so I'm helping them up level in their business. And sometimes they're just starting. And so it's a big decision for a lot of people to like go try something new, to invest in themselves after having a kid break. And so anyone on my team can attest to this too. Like we're constantly gathering those pain points and listening to where they are so we can refine the offer and refine the message of what they need to hear, what they need to get prepared for to be successful. Because it's also this funny thing too, which you and I talk a lot about, Brenna, is like making sure we're getting the right people who will actually have success in the program, because it isn't for everyone. And so there's also like a little bit of the repelling, or like maybe it's not right now or not the right time. So there's just so much in there. And I feel like even in my space, the term virtual assistant and the idea of what that is and who does it has evolved so much that I just have to get deeper and deeper every launch. I can't just use the same messaging every time.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's funny. I was having a conversation with someone today, and I was telling them that I had this client, and this, I don't know, gosh, maybe it was like a year ago, but maybe a year and a half, maybe even longer. But basically, what ended up happening is this particular person, we had written their website for, and they were very popular weight loss coaches. And right about that, between the time we got finished with it to like 6 months later, the whole weight loss industry had completely changed because of GLP-1s and Ozempic and these things. And it was like a blink of an eye, things had changed. And I think that's something that we don't take into account on. And this is why thinking about your customers so much is so incredibly important, is that like things are, unfortunately, fortunately, however you want to look at it, are so quickly evolving in today's market. Like it's hard to keep up, and it's hard to know exactly what people want when they want it. And I also think too that something that is, I think there's this cross section though that doesn't get talked about enough, because what I'll hear sometimes is, and I've even heard myself saying it, is like, oh, especially as a copywriter, it's like, oh, we got to think about our ideal client, and we got to do, we got to see what they say. But we also have to be sure enough of our business and our authority in the business, so that, because if you start asking your audience what they want, they're going to tell you like the absolute easiest thing. They're going to tell you that they don't want to pay any money for what you have, right? There's all of these things. So it's also knowing yourself and your business well enough, just like Sarah Blakely does, to really truly understand like, okay, what is the thing that my audience needs, and how can I step in as the authority and the expert in my industry to give them the best possible results. And when we do that, sometimes we have to actually, for lack of better words, sometimes we actually have to kind of switch our messaging around so that there's a cross section between those two. Have you ever noticed that, Emily?
Yeah, I was just thinking about how people are getting used to like the same old messages too. Like in my space, like, okay, I can't help but make it about me right now, but I think about, oh, easy money, you'll make money online, 10K months, and like all this like bogus messaging that they're hearing that like they don't even believe anymore. So it's that, and it's like being real. It's like leaning into how I'm different as well, like knowing my audience so well. And you said something about being confident in my offer. And all of that kind of comes together because they see through anything that is fake or too good to be true, or maybe that's just like how my industry is right now. But then you add in all the AI, like Brenna, that's like happening and just like knocking everyone upside down. And I don't know, it's a lot going into one launch moment. It's like, what do you say? When do you say it? How do you say it? It all kind of matters because your audience is getting bombarded and they're getting these different messages and they really need to hear the right thing. Otherwise, they just ignore you.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. And I think too, like that's like, and that's the part about launching and content that doesn't get enough. Like it's not. it's tough sometimes because you have to do everything that we just said. You have to know your customer so well. You have to know yourself well enough to have the authority. You
Yes.
have to, that we're in, we've all heard it. I've heard it so much and I say it so much, but it's so true, which is we're in a trust recession, right? And the way that my people, and I work with clients across all industries, from business coaches to weight loss, fitness coaches, to people who are therapists, to like it goes, social media managers, like, but something that is like I see across the board is that people are less trusting, right? And because of that, we even more so have to be on top of like our audience, our messaging. We have to know what they're saying and thinking so that we can talk to them in a way that they trust us, while also creating interesting content all at the same time. Like there's a lot going on. And I would love in the comments if you like tell me like if you're feeling some of this, like the balance, tell me like, yeah, like the balance between trying to do so much and, trying to make sure your customer's happy while you're also trying to make sure that you stand out, while you're trying to cut through the noise. Like it's a lot. And there's something here that I don't think it's talked about enough, and is like there's three beliefs that your people need to have before they're ready to buy from you. And this is also so incredibly important. And this is, once again, when I think about going back to like, Sarah, and thinking about our customers and our messaging, is that you have, and just in case I don't even think I said it, I got ahead of myself. If you don't know who Sarah Blakely is, she's the owner of, or was the owner of Spanx. Now she has something called Sneaks. And she started out, she always talks about how she started out in like the basement, I think, of like, or like her extra apartment or apartment room, building Spanx. And now it's like a $1 billion empire. But the things that you have to think about for your customer and your client is that, first of all, you have to be the three beliefs that your people have to have before they buy from you is that you are the person that can help them, and that is stepping into that authority role, that you're the one that they believe can help them. But it's not just authority. I also, the balance of authority is what I say personality, which is people have to know if they like you. And we always hear you have to buy from people that you know, like, and trust. Is that you can't just, authority right now is great, but when you can counteract that with some of your personality, it really makes the difference. Emily, what do you think about that?
I just keep thinking about like the resonance of having the right story, the right phrase, really thinking like she gets me, this is what I need, and just really being pinpointed right there. Yeah, like I feel like I'm like swarmed in content. Like I have so much. Sorry, this isn't like my smartest time of day right now, Brenna. I feel like a little silly. There's so much content that my team puts out there with my blog, my podcast, and my email. And then it's like, but what do they actually need to hear right now so that it is pulling a buying trigger? And that's why I think this is gold, because it helps me kind of like filter everything. And I actually told you, like, I love this pre-launch cheat sheet because it helps me refocus my content and making sure that there is that resonance.
Yeah. They also have to believe that your methods are going to help their problem. And
Yeah.
so this is also incredibly important because we have so many different options out there, different ways to solve a problem. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in a moment, but they have to, right? So right now I'm in the launch for the pre-launch plan program. Well, for someone to buy from me, I always say they have to believe that a pre-launch is the way for them to pre-sell seats, to increase launch revenue. They have to believe that it's the way to have easier and less stressful launches, and to call in the right people. But if they don't have that belief first, they're never ever going to buy the pre-launch plan program. And same thing goes with Emily. Like, Emily, talk about what your person has to believe before they're ready to buy from you.
One of the things they need to do is like be able to believe in themselves that they're capable of following through. Like that was one of the ones that you helped pull out from my pre-launch plan. A lot of my people have tried different things or like left corporate. And so they have to kind of reestablish that about themselves. I think I do a pretty good job of setting up that I'm the person that can help them like through the offer and the course. but some of those internal things can be like the toughest ones to touch and help them see. And I think that's really what I learned through the pre-launch with you and working with you.
Yeah, and that's goes to number three. They have to believe in themselves. And this part gets overlooked. And I always think, a lot of times you'll get time objections. I don't, right now is not the right time, or we'll get money objections. But what kind of is underneath the hood of that a lot of times is that for whatever reasons that they don't believe that they are going to get the results. And even when you have so much social proof, I was thinking about when I was going to actually work and do Shrimp Club. Or I was thinking about Shrimp Club with Laura Belgray, and I this was a few years ago, and I really wanted to do it. And I kept saying, I'm going to do this next time. I'm going to do this next time. But if I could really stop now and like self-examine myself, is that it had nothing to do with the time not being right. And yeah, I probably didn't have the money at that moment, but what it really was is that I just didn't feel like I was going to get the results like everyone else was going to get results. I didn't think I deserved to be in that room. And so when you're thinking about your upcoming launches, it's not just a matter of, oh, I need to think about, like why my program is better than everyone else's, or like the bonuses I'm going to do, or the things that we really concentrate a lot on during launches. It has a lot more to do with if someone believes they're going to get the results, and something if they believe in themselves enough to do that. So, and the other thing, the last one I'll say on this one, and then we'll move on to the trend number two, which is the other trend that the other thing that people have to believe is and this is my friend Dana Malstaff says this, is like, why now is the time to take action. And so being able to, in your launch materials, and this is so incredibly important, we have, I even think about myself. I have like 10 different problems I could solve for right now in my business. And it's what is the problem that I'm going to solve right now, and making a case in your content for that. Okay, let's see. We're going to go on to trend number two. And this one is that you've got to market like Hollywood. And this one I'll go down like saying forever. If you think about Hollywood and movies, if you think about Taylor Swift and her new album that's coming out October 6th, if you think about Alex Hormozy, who just had his biggest book launch ever, right? If you think about movies in general, movies come out, they start showing you trailers 120 days ahead of time. And there is a reason for that. And that is because they know if they can capture your interest early, it makes buyers, even if you haven't handed over the cash. And so, Emily, like, what do you think about this? And what have you seen working with your clients in terms of us having this extended, longer buying cycle than probably we've ever seen?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, I think I already knew like before I bet you to have a little bit of a runway. I'd seen that with some clients who just are like, all right, we're launching Thursday, and then wondered why no one bought. But I especially see that just with how the buyer cycle is. It's not like a clear, like, okay, 7 touches and then someone's ready to buy. It's like more of like a windy road now, and people are getting into your world and like learning about you and kind of moving around very erratically. And so I think that longer buyer cycle gives them time to have those touch points. And then it's like almost like window shopping. I guess that's what I think about it. Like they're watching your other launch and then they're coming back like the next launch. And so in a way, it's kind of like a long launch stack if you want to look at it like that. But people are careful. I think it goes back to your trend number one, like the buyers, the trust recession, and buyers are taking a little bit longer and they've tried things that haven't worked. And I don't think it's just like a one and done anymore. So I'm definitely seeing this, like not the straight line, but like more of the like weaving out and taking their time.
Yeah, if I did a data for my own for the pre-launch plan program, and it was like the average time for someone to buy from me was longer than I think it was something. when I looked back, it had been like people that had been with me for uh when I looked at like the majority, it was like over a year. And I was like,
Oh
oh my
gosh.
gosh, I got to shrink this buying cycle, right? Like I was talking to someone, I'm like, this is too long. And the person was like, well, why? Like, why is this too long? Like, this is what we're seeing now in the market is, and the other thing goes back to think about if the average person has 10 problems in their business and they're trying to solve them right now, they're also thinking, they're prioritizing, they're trying to figure out
Yes.
what it is. So I do think we can absolutely create content that gets people and gets their attention and helps shift their beliefs early. But what we're seeing is that people are taking a little bit longer to buy. And it's why in the old days you could run cold ads to a webinar and then boom, you get, huge conversion off of that. And we're just not seeing that anymore. And I haven't seen it now probably for a couple of years, but especially in 2025, it's been a lot. So
I
I know,
did.
like, go
Oh,
ahead.
I was gonna say I did an analysis of my buyers and like I think 50, it's like 50-50 cold versus or people who've been on my list longer than like a year. And then the other 50% were within a month or two of the launch. And so it was really quite divided. But what I found, and I don't know if this is okay to say, but like my students who had the most success actually thought about it longer and
Yes.
made that stronger like decision. And some of the people who like rushed and bought, I'm just thinking like I have a couple of people who are like, okay, maybe this isn't the right decision, but I definitely had more refunds from the people who made quicker decisions. So I actually want people to take their time and do it right and then have success. So there's that part of it. I also think about just like the frequency bias, like the way our brains are wired. It's almost like your marketing is like doubling up because if you can have the longer window, like people just start to pay attention and like see it more and then choose to see it more and more and get that reinforced. And so I kind of like to just like let that like that launch, that pre-launch, like do double duty.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I looked up, I wrote it down because I knew I'd forget the numbers, but like on average, B2B market, so if you are selling to another business, takes 60 touches or 62 touches. And if you're in the B2C market, so you're selling to consumers, it's 50. So if you think about it, if you're launching, you have this offer, and even if you send out 20 launch emails, right? That's only if, and you're selling to another business, that's only like one third of the touches someone even sees for you to even be like in their brain. And that's how we're not thinking about like some of our selling cycles, and why I talk about pre-launch so much is because you're you're using your content in a way to make those touches where you're starting to shift those beliefs earlier that we talked about, instead of trying to like smush it all in. And this is like something that I talked about at social media marketing world. And what I see a lot of times, it's we're trying to like smush in all of the belief shifting, all of the trust building, all of these things around our offer into like a 7 to 10 day launch period, when we really need to like break it up. And so there's something that I go through in the pre-launch plan program, and which is the awareness journey. And so what you might not realize is like where your person is in the awareness journey. So if you're listening right now, I want you to think about it, because I'm going to want you to put in the comments like where you think your person is, which is you're now unaware is someone who has like no idea, they don't know they have a problem. So I don't even talk about unaware markets very much. Most of us are not in a completely unaware market. But there's something called problem awareness, where it is your person has a problem and they know they have a problem, but they're not looking to solve that problem at this time. Then there's something called solution aware, which is your person knows that they have a problem and they're actively looking for a solution. And in between problem aware and solution aware, I didn't put it on this graph. I actually think there's something called situation aware, which situation aware is your person has a problem, they're looking for a solution, but they're looking for the quote unquote wrong solution. They're not looking for the right solution. So for me, what this would look like is okay, someone is wanting to have bigger launch results, and they think that they need a copywriter to come in and write all of the copy for them, and that's the reason why their launches aren't going as well as they would like them to, is because they need better copywriting. So when that person is, they're out there looking for a copywriter to help them with their launches. So
I
when I
love
come
that.
in, I have to go in and go, okay, no, actually, what your true problem is that you're not doing a pre-launch. So as I'm talking about this and you're going through, tell me who you think your person is, because most people are falling into this. Is your person problem aware? Like they're not actively looking for a solution. They're solution aware, which is they're looking for a solution and they know they have a problem, they're actively looking for the solution. Or do they fall into like situation awareness, which is they know they have a problem, they're looking for a solution, but they're looking for the wrong solution? Emily, who does your person fall into?
I like your situation aware. I hadn't heard that. I feel like a lot of mine are doing that, like looking at the wrong type of product. But can it be something that's like immediate related, or does it need to be something that's like way off? Like your example of a copywriter, or I think about someone who thinks they just need to hire an ads manager when really they need to do a pre-launch. Um, I think a lot of my people are like looking at general VA courses and thinking that that's going to solve their problems, but they really have no idea. So is that situation
I,
aware?
I would put that person into situation aware. And so what
Okay.
happens with, and that's where I see right now, this is where a lot of us are in our business, is that our people are out there looking for help, but they're looking for, once again, I'm using wrong because I don't think there's right or wrong here, but the wrong type of help. And so what ends up happening here is that these people fall back into problem aware, because now we have to go and re-educate them on their problem. And so, what I see sometimes with launches is that someone is trying to take what we just talked about and have someone at that problem awareness level, because their people had been situation aware, and they're trying to move them up all of these ladders. Because when you get to most aware is where someone's ready to buy, they're just waiting
Hmm?
for the right offer to come.
Mm.
And so what you have to think about here is like, where does your person fall into? Because that will determine what someone sees before their launch. And this is why, and this isn't like the sexiest of launch trends, but the trend that I'm seeing is this longer runway. And it's because we're really running into people who are a lot of times have a lot of situation awareness. And now we have to move them up. So, because by the time we get to product aware is, this is someone who knows they have a problem. They know that they're looking for a solution. They're looking for the solution, your method that they actually can, or your solution and your method. And from there, when they get to product aware, now they're just trying to figure out who is the right person. So when you can use some of your pre-launch content to move people up these awareness levels, you're not trying to do all of this during launch.
I feel like I got stuck in a lot of problem aware content before you and I hammered out our pre-launch, because I was just like informing people that there was this option to making money online, and it was this virtual assistant world. And this was a couple years ago. And it was just over teaching and very educational, but it wasn't moving people along that cycle at all. And I think that's where I struggled the most, because it's really easy for me to put that problem aware content out there.
Yeah. And that's what I see a lot of times during pre-launches, and gosh, even not a tiny bit in launches too, when I start looking at people's like launch emails and things. But what I see a lot is that people they're speaking to someone who's very much at the wrong problem or at the wrong awareness level, and they're over educating. They're spending a lot of time educating people, which when I show people a pre-launch, we actually do little to no educational content, and that kind of like hurts people's brains. But if you think about it, especially in the age of AI, like educational content doesn't move the needle. And then on top of it, and this is where this right fit readiness comes into, and this is something that we go over in depth in the pre-launch plan program, but it's also figuring out where your people are and their awareness levels while also talking to the right person, the person that's not ambivalent, the person who's ready to take action. Because what I see a lot of times is that and I catch myself doing it, it's really hard, is that you talk to people. Like for me, I'll give an example. Oh, you've been having terrible launches. Like your launches, all you hear is crickets. I don't use a lot of that language because I don't want to call in the person who's like down and out, who it feels like all they hear is crickets when they launch. I want to speak to the person who's like, hey, I have something amazing that I need to sell that the world needs, and I need to figure out a way to get my messaging out there and call in the right people. You hear the difference between the tones of that. And so a lot of times we end up accidentally talking to, my friend Marisa Corcoran calls it the Eeyores, where we talk to the people who are kind of like down and out instead of talking to the people who are ready to come in and take action. Okay. Okay, so the last one that we're going to talk about here is, and this is like a hill I'm willing to die on, which is a trend that I'm seeing more so than ever, is you need to ditch the wait list. And I was funny, I was just talking to Laura Belgray about this. I interviewed her because we just had an amazing launch together. And we were talking about this, which is what most people don't want to admit. Now, if you have a wait list for your launch that's converting like gangbusters, ignore what I'm saying, right? Like, I'll never speak in absolutes, but I would say for most of my people, even people that are having very successful launches at times, their wait list is not converting. Emily, have you seen the same thing?
Oh my gosh, yeah, I just went through a big client launch and with a wait list, not one person converted, not one.
Yeah. And I think this happens. It's like people get like one or two. And I think the problem with the wait list is in the name. It's a wait list, right? Like you get people on and they're just waiting and they're distracted and they move on to something else. And I describe a wait list as a way where you agitated someone, right? And I don't think agitation is bad. Like they recognize they have a problem that they want to solve, and they think by putting themselves on a wait list, it's almost like that action of putting them on a wait list gives them a little bit of relief, like they took a step towards solving their problem, and they didn't solve their problem, right? Like they didn't actually, they just it was like an easy fix in the moment. And I think it was on, I found this on AI, so take this with a grain of salt, which was like something like 70% of wait lists like don't convert at all. And yeah, Emily said it, which is waiting energy, like adding clothes to your shopping cart. Yeah, yeah, I do the same thing. And sometimes I do it just to make myself feel better. Like I'm not buying the $700 stuff from Nordstrom. I just added. I just am needing this distraction for a moment. And that's exactly what happens. And I would like everyone that's in here that's listening, I would love for you to know, like, how often do you buy off of someone's wait list? I bet you the percentage is very low. What about you, Emily?
No, I join them and I forget all about it. Like it doesn't matter the sense of nurturing. Like I feel like if I'm ready to go, I'm ready to go. I think sometimes maybe if there's like limited spots, it might make me I don't even join wait lists. I'm like, I'll just pay attention. But I think if I see like a limited spot, maybe there might be some urgency there. But yeah, no, I don't really do it.
Yeah. Evie said, "Oh, I do that with Amazon stuff. When I actually need to buy something, it gets removed." Yeah, can I tell you how long? Or I put it for like later, and then it becomes like a graveyard of things that I'm gonna like buy or get later. And Karen said, "Yes, absolutely." Debbie said, "So, what do you do between launches on your sales page? Do you not collect the emails?" Yeah, it's a great question. And I think it depends on what you're doing. So I like even just little changes of this is to call it an interest list versus a wait list. So that you are actually changing the way people are thinking about it so that you're getting more qualified buyers too, right? A wait list makes me think I'm waiting. If I'm going to click enough to say I'm interested, then all of a sudden, and I actually did this with a client, a pre-launch plan program student, I should say, who was one of my coaching clients, and we just switched some of the wording around. And I can't remember the exact conversions, but I feel like she had gone from like getting like almost no one to like talking. She went from like zero to getting like five people on her interest list, which wasn't huge, but then she was able to directly reach out to those people because at that point the interest level had changed, right? The commitment level had changed where they were saying that they were interested. And so I would think about too, and this depends and goes like deeper into strategy, which Debbie, we can talk about at the end if you'd like a little bit more, which is like, because what people don't realize too with the wait list is that a wait list, if you're going to do a wait list, you need a whole separate strategy. So you have your pre-launch strategy, your launch strategy, and all of a sudden you need a waitlist strategy because what most people do on a waitlist is they put people on a waitlist and then they throw them on to, and then they're getting the same exact emails that everyone else is getting. And so instead of creating, I like to do an interest list. And this is why I'm such a huge proponent of how can we create pre-sales? How can we set up an environment where we're actually selling to people ahead of time and creating that instead of just putting them onto an arbitrary wait list where they forget that they were on? Emily, do you have any other thoughts around that?
I think that was one of my big launch years is we did like an early access offer and we kind of incorporated that to get people who were ready. I took your pre-selling strategy, which was a lot of extra work. I'm not gonna lie, like it was. And I don't really have the capacity to do extra waitlist stuff, but I've experimented with that. I think what was most disappointing was like telling my client, like, oh, we have all these people who raised their hand. And then when it came time to launch, like none of them converted. It kind of just like messed with our head and our numbers because we were anticipating one thing and got another. And so I will never go into a launch like that or, sugarcoating it, just to be real.
Yeah. And I think too, the thing that happens when you're able to do pre-sales, even if it's a little bit more work up front, is that you suddenly like it builds your confidence because
Yeah.
all of a sudden you have people that are buying ahead of time. And when we have people buying ahead of time, like Emily just talked about the energy, and I don't think that gets talked enough about in launches, is that when your energy is down because people aren't converting, people can feel that energy, and then you become, you get more like the desperate energy, which none of us want. Where if you're having pre-sales, all of a sudden you're feeling super confident because people are buying. If people are buying, it creates a little bit of FOMO. When you create a little bit of FOMO and natural urgency and some natural scarcity, it gets more people interested. And when that happens, your confidence goes up and it starts to create this beautiful cyclical effect. And that really makes a difference in your launches and your moods. And like Emily talked about, like even if some of the strategies that we did with some of her most successful launches is because we were getting those early buyers in.
One thing we did a private podcast that one big launch, which just to the waitlist only. And we had some of that content that you had hinted about earlier. It was very strategic in the type of content we gave them and the channel we gave them. So it felt exclusive. I played around with mixers too with my pre-launch, like going into the summer with people having an opportunity to meet up and have some FaceTime. And I think that worked well too. But it's a big mental load to like have your game face on and be hosting those, but that worked. But just trying to think outside the box besides additional emails and a way to get like the hand raisers raising their hand.
Yeah, exactly. Claire asked, how long is too long to pre-sell? Is October pre-sale too long for January start? No, I think that you can get people in early. I just think you have to think about the strategy of what does someone get when they get in early that entices them to not wait. And we can talk more about that at the end too, Claire, if you have questions about that. And Liz said, is it because they are told it's a wait list? I have a client who tags people who say they're interested and she converts. They get on the list, and if they don't buy, she moves them to the next one. but she's doing this like every 6 weeks. So they're not waiting for a long time. She does different emails though. Yeah. So if you, once again, like if she is moving them pretty quickly, and there's a certain, like I always say, like wait lists work well for a couple of things. Usually if it's a shorter time period, although even 6 weeks, I'm impressed that she's converting. But you said she's using different emails though. So I'm assuming that's why. Because usually it's a shorter time period, like 1 to 2 weeks. I did a pre-launch with Kevin Rogers, and we did do an inch or a wait list, but it was only for 2 weeks long. Also, if you're someone who is very well known, like an Amy Porterfield, right? Like some of that clout and visibility can help towards people converting that are on a wait list and they're waiting. The other thing too, I think, is if it's a smaller dollar amount, right? If you're someone, I know, like I put myself, if you will, on a wait list for a pair of jeans, a new pair of jeans that's coming out, or clothes, like I love shopping. So like if you're doing something that's a little bit lower ticket, I could see a wait list working, but you have to think through the different aspects of like, how much is your product? How warm are your people? How long have they been waiting? Like all of these go into like thinking about your strategy. Um, and then Skyhawk said, yes, waitlist can kick off a launch with good energy and momentum when you go into a launch. Yes. I think if you're, once again, if you're using a waitlist in like that short time period, but the way that most people use their waitlist in on average is that I see, especially right now in this busy, crowded, noisy market, that on average, most people's waitlists just aren't converting super great. And so, what I want to tell you about here for a few minutes, and then Emily and I are going to take your questions, and I'm happy to answer any of them. I also told you if you showed up live that I would give you my email templates, my launch templates, I should say. And so, what I want to go over with really quickly here is I first want to just talk to you about like some of the results. Now, Emily is just one of like my many students that have gone through the program. I talked about like how Laura Belgray, I just recently helped. And Laura was someone who was like, I'm a copywriter. Like I do emails. I worked in TV. Like she actually wrote this in an email yesterday. Like I don't need I don't need Brenna's help, right? But she was having launches that felt like a slog, and for Shrimp Club. And so, what we ended up doing here is we ended up putting into effect a pre launch where we decided to pre sell early. We didn't put people on a wait list. We created an opportunity for people to buy early. And when we did that, we pre-sold 80% of her seats in pre-launch. She talks about how she went into her summer, how last summer was a miserable summer for her and how she was hating life, how she went into this summer completely relaxed, and she did a mostly lazy launch, which is only email, and she was able to enjoy her summer. Now you might be like, okay, I'm not Laura Belgray though, right? I'm not a national best-selling book. Well, take my client Michelle Pollock. She is an executive leadership coach, and she used to tell me how she used to hate marketing, and she didn't know how to sell in her content without being pushy. But she learned how to be more specific, and she sold out not only her one-to-one coaching, but her group program by using the principles that I show you inside the pre-launch plan program. Another favorite student of mine is Susan Rioch. And she talks about how she felt haphazard in her previous launches. And that by going ahead and doing a pre-launch, the first one that we did together, she tripled enrollment and pre-sold 40% of her seats. She talked about how every student, that was what Emily and I talked about it, like every student was a perfect fit, because the only thing, I heard Hillary Weiss say this once, the only thing worse than a not getting a sale is getting a sale for the wrong person. And it can make a huge difference in your business having the right people in. And every launch, I haven't talked to Susan. She just launched. So I'm excluding that one. But every launch since we started working together, she has continued to increase her results. And her list for that first launch that I talked about was only 800 people. So her list was not huge when she tripled her enrollment. She was able to do it on a very small list. And last but not least, I'll mention Stephanie Feld. Stephanie was part of the last round of the pre-launch plan program. Stephanie couldn't make any of the calls for the pre-launch plan program last time. When she actually launched a brand new program, Stephanie's also, not only is she a therapist, and but she's also someone who knows copy. She's actually taught copy in other classes and or other groups. And when we started to work together on the pre-launch, she pre-sold nearly half of her spots before her car opened. She closed her doors 120% to goal. And she said that this is a process that she's going to use from now until forever. So the pre-launch plan program, you've seen my launch emails, most of you, if you're on my list, but this is a program. It's a very high touch experience with a step-by-step framework that helps you turn your content that you're already creating, and it helps you create a strategic runway that does the heavy lifting of your launch. So if we think about the trends that we're seeing, the trust recessions, that people are taking longer to buy, how important our messaging is, figuring out how to pre-sell and ditch the wait list. Those are the things that we talk about and discuss inside the pre-launch plan program. And with that, this program is for you if you want to know how to pre-sell seats. If you are looking for, whoops, it's something funky on my there. If you're looking for an easier way to launch that doesn't rely on doors or closing emails, if you want a repeatable step-by-step system for every launch that you do moving forward, and you're not someone who just wants to take, you've taken the courses before, you haven't seen maybe, the momentum or the trying to get things ready. If you really want accountability and support and want me to help you with every step of the way in the pre-launch, this is the program for you. This program is different because, sorry, my slides here, it's a proven system that's been used by dozens of clients who've pre-sold spots, increased revenue, and launched with more ease. You get personalized feedback and accountability. It's a small group format with direct support from me. You get built-in implementation time, which means the whole goal of this is that you don't fall behind. That this is a course that you go and we work on everything from your messaging to having all of your pre-launch copy done and dusted by the time you're done with the program. And we support different learning styles. There's live calls, recorded modules, a private podcast. And this really isn't about creating a fancy funnel or mastering tech. It's about creating the message that resonates with your people so you can become your own Sarah Blakely, and you can really use it and get people leaning in before they open their cart. And Emily, can you talk just a little bit about your experience working with me and going through the pre-launch process?
Well, I knew when I was rebranding my course that I've been through a million other client launches, like $1 million launches. I knew that I had to put energy into a pre-launch. And so I got you at the beginning when you were starting this, when I knew I could get a good rate, not going to lie, and had you work through the pre-launch with me. It was mainly because I was drowning in the content and didn't know what to say, when to say it, and how to say it. And I think I also struggled with how to talk about and seed my program without like turning it into like a full on like, you know, I was going to make a joke about like DM me and I'll send you the link type of like obvious like sales email in the pre-launch. And so you helped me get organized with a lot of those like limiting beliefs and what I needed to say. You comb through the audience research and then help me ask the right questions. So I'm gathering that data. And that has paid off launch after launch because now I have this system that is like continually helping me evolve my own messaging and knowing when to talk to buyers and how to like what questions to ask. So it just keeps feeding the launch machine. And then I actually sent my teammate through your program and had her do it and implement it because I knew I needed a repeatable system because there's just so much that has to be said. I really like my business depends on these once a year launches. And so it was like too critical for me not to mess up. And so my teammate had created that and now I can rework it every year. I have the structure. I do have to evolve. Like this year, like the big topic is AI and how do I bring that in and what changes have there been? But I have like a really solid structure. And I think it's going to let me start launching twice a year too, now that I have like the right people in place. And I told you when I was figuring out what I needed to invest in coming out for my business, it was the pre-launch. Like I skipped the ads, I skipped hiring a copywriter to do all of that, a designer, and I knew that if I could nail this content when I opened the cart, I would actually have buyers, and it worked. It did work.
Yeah. And that's the fun part of it, right? Like
Yeah,
I think your first launch was it, I think the slide ahead was like 40%. And I think Emily
yeah,
talks to so much about having that repeatable system of how to talk to people. And for Emily too, if you're listening and you're someone who's also a service provider and you're doing this for other people, you can now also take this skill and use it for your clients' launches as well.
yeah. We've had a couple people in my work group take your program.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of Natasha and Brittany, and both of them were launch managers who wanted to understand the content better, but they were the ones orchestrating what's going out when and where, and they might be working with the copywriter too. So I think it's a must for launch managers.